Hello and welcome. Today I want to speak on instigating generational blessings. I'm speaking on generational blessings from a biblical perspective. And I'm taking my text from the book of 2 Samuel chapter 9, the story of David and Mephibosheth. In many of our churches today, you hear so much talk about generational curses. People are told that their present predicament is as a result of certain things that happened in the past, evil things that their parents did, their grandparents did, that's causing them their present, bad situation. And so for such people, deliverance sessions are organized, special programs are organized for deliverance. But beyond the narrative of curses, if you flip it over, there can also be generational blessings. So if the wrongs that our parents did, our forefathers did in the past, have instigated generational curses, it also comes to reason that the good that we also do can also instigate generational blessings. And that's what this video is all about. So if you're ready, let's go in. Now the book of 2 Samuel chapter 9. Let's read. It opens with a question. And King David said, "Is there still anyone who's left in the house of Saul that I may show him kindness for Jonathan's sake?" The question is repeated again in verse 3 when Ziba was called in. And he said, "Is there not still someone of the house of Saul to whom I may show the kindness of God?" And from there the story unfolds. David was told that Jonathan still had a son somewhere, the name Mephibosheth, and he was lame in both feet, living in the house of Machir, the son of Emielu, in one remote location. So David said, "Go get him. Let me bless him." So he was called, Ziba was sent to call Mephibosheth, and he came before David. And this is what David told him. He said, "Do not fear, for I will surely show you kindness for Jonathan's, your father's sake, and will restore to you all of the land of Saul, your grandfather, and you shall eat bread at my table continually." Hallelujah. Look at verse 8. He said, "Then he bowed himself and said, 'What is your servant that you should look upon such a dead dog as I?'" The term "such a dead dog as I" already shows that the guy was in a very terrible situation. Poverty stricken, in a very, very precarious situation when the king called on him. So listen, let's go on. Verse 9 it says, "And the king called to Ziba," that's the servant of Saul, "and said to him, I have given to your master's son all that belonged to Saul and to all his house. You therefore and your sons and servants shall work the land for him, and you shall bring in the harvest, that your master's son may have food to eat. But Mephibosheth, your master's son, shall eat bread at my table always." And he told Mephibosheth, "As for Mephibosheth," said the king, "he shall eat at my table like one of the king's sons." Verse 13, and said, "So Mephibosheth dwelt in Jerusalem, for he ate continually at the king's table." What an enormous generational blessing for the sake of Jonathan, the father. Let's look at the range of blessings. First, all that belonged to King Saul, his grandfather, the former king, properties of all sorts were given to him. Number 2, Ziba had 15 children and 20 servants. So all these people were instructed to do all the farming to feed Mephibosheth and his household. So he didn't need to work. People will work and come and feed you. Wow, amazing. Then number 3, Mephibosheth moved from his remote and desolate village of Lodebar to the capital city of Jerusalem. From being a squatter in somebody's house, he came to his own apartment in Jerusalem. Number 4 blessing, he continually ate at the king's palace, just like one of the king's sons. So what is the central message of this passage and in my sermon today? Mephibosheth's story changed because of generational blessings instigated by his father Jonathan. In other words, Mephibosheth was a beneficiary of generational blessings. Although his grandfather Saul was wicked to David, the father changed the narrative by being good to King David, who we saw as God's anointed king of Israel. But what exactly did Jonathan do that touched King David so much that he was willing to bless anybody left in his household even after he had passed on? Let's look at them. First, Jonathan was the eldest son of King Saul, and by the nature of things, he's supposed to be the next king of Israel. He was the heir to the throne. Yet, Jonathan gave up this political entitlement for David because he saw David as being anointed by God. So, by so doing, he honored David, and above all, he honored God who has anointed David as king over Israel. The second one is this. Jonathan loved David as a king. And you know, Jonathan was a very good warrior, a very good fighter. And he did all in his power to protect David, to keep him safe. He fought hard to protect this God-anointed king. And thirdly, Jonathan opposed his father's plans to kill David. Several times, Saul, out of jealousy, plotted to kill David. And each time, Jonathan will go and tell David, this is what my father is planning to do. And David made his escape. So with all these things, David could not forget what Jonathan has done, the good things he has done. So, although Jonathan later died, fighting alongside the father in the disastrous battle of Mount Gilboa, David could not forget all the good that Jonathan did. And that's why in this verse, in this passage we read, we kept on hearing him say, I will bless for your father's sake, for your father's sake. Now, this story tells us that whatever we do in our lives have repercussions for generations yet unborn. That's the universal law of cause and effect, and if you like, the law of karma. As parents, we should be mindful of the lives that we live because our actions and inactions have great implications for our children and for our children's children. When you live a sinful, corrupt, and wicked life, even though you may be rich, you are instigating generational curses for your children and children's children to come. Conversely, when you live a good and righteous life, even though you may not be rich, but you are leaving behind generational blessings for your children and children's children. In the book of Psalms chapter 37, verse 25, David said, I have been young and am now old, yet I have not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his descendants begging bread. And we saw that into this passage. This should be a great consolation for you. You saw in the story of Mephibosheth, that's a classical example. He was very poor, but because of the good that the parents have done, no, you cannot be begging bread. And now David made everything available for him. So today you have the opportunity to change your generational story positively. King Saul was wicked, but Jonathan refused to follow in his father's footsteps. And by that singular action, changed the narrative and instigated generational blessings instead of generational curses. So this is my message today. I hope it blesses your life. I hope it registers. And please, if you are blessed, leave a comment, share, and let's take action